What is going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Forward Thinking Founders. I am very grateful to have your attention, at least for the next 15 minutes of this episode. Forward Thinking Founders is a podcast where I interview pre-seed and seed stage founders about their products, what they want to build into the world, and why. We dive into how they spend their time, what's their vision, what's the origin stories, all these things, so you can learn all about what's coming tomorrow. Because these companies haven't hit critical scale yet. Most of them haven't hit product market fit. These are just early stage companies, and the big question is, what can this be? And in this podcast, we bring that out. So with that, I really hope you enjoy your time listening to today's episode. And I've already done 200 plus, so if you like this one, listen to some of the other ones, like with Imadi Kund, Austin Allred, Leah Culver. We have great interviews, so check it out, enjoy the repository, and for now, let's get into today's episode. Here we go. All right, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Forward Thinking Founders, where we talk to founders about their companies, their visions for the future, and how the two collide. Today, I'm very excited to be talking to Tim Connors, who's a co-founder of Pearl. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
Hey, Matt. I'm glad we're finally doing this, man. It's been a long time coming. You have
I know.
a very good podcasting voice.
Didn't we try to book this like over 6 months ago? And I either rescheduled or rescheduled it back and forth. But here we are in October of 2021, recording the podcast. For people that haven't heard of your company, they aren't sure what Pearl is. What are you working on? What is Pearl?
So Pearl is a personal career agent that puts your job hunt on autopilot, really focused on folks who are currently employed that are looking to move in the long term, but are typically too busy to find that next role. You just text our service, it's all over text message, and we look for roles for you and actually make introductions to hiring managers on your behalf. So it's this autopilot kind of service for employed people to switch roles.
So walk me through how this works, a little more detail. So I'm an employed person. I work at Facebook or whatever, and I'm opportunistic. Kind of walk us through literally the path from I'm working at Facebook or somewhere to I got a job somewhere else through Pearl. Can you walk us through the UX?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up Facebook, because out of like all the big FANG companies, Facebook definitely has the disproportionately large amount of people like that have signed up for Pearl. So they must be having a bad time over there. So I think like the typical mindset that drives people to our site is they're feeling this career FOMO, right? You're coming up on 3-4 years at Facebook maybe, and you're seeing all the excitement in startups. Most startups are remote. So you're like seeing this distributed world, all this exciting technology, and you're like, damn, like I'm really thinking about moving. But like you work a 40-50 hour a week job and you're already paid 6 figures. And when you're part of that culture, it doesn't make a ton of sense to apply to jobs actively. It's a very low ROI activity. And so you tend to bank on these inbound requests on LinkedIn and whatnot. But it doesn't feel very satisfying, just kind of hoping that the next company that you'll want to work for just like comes and finds you at the right moment. And so these folks are coming to us saying, hey, it sounds much better to me if I could just tell you once what I'm looking for and not have to worry about missing out on something. You'll look for me for exactly what I'm asking for, and then you'll bring those opportunities to me. And instead of bringing me an application to fill out, you'll actually bring me a person to talk to. So it's just like a much more desirable state. So this person doesn't feel like they're missing out. And so they'll come to us, they'll tell us what they're looking for over text message. We'll say, hey, we found this opportunity. Here's how much money they've raised. Here who their backers are. They're hiring for such and such role. Do you want to talk to the team? And if the person says yes, we'll ping the team saying, hey, here's a new person that wants to talk. And if there's mutual interest, we'll set up that intro over an email, and you're done. You're in the recruiting funnel now.
So tell me about how'd you get to this idea in this company? Can you walk me through the origin story for Pearl?
Yeah, I'll give you an abbreviated one since it's quite long. We originally went in 2 different directions before the landing in this third direction of this conversational product. But all along, we were kind of struck by this problem wherein there's just an enormous friction in switching roles, and it creates a lot of unnecessary misery in the working world, right? There's this glue that sticks people in undesirable positions, and it's just a huge pain in the ass to search for a job. but it's an extra pain in the ass to try to search for a job while you're already balancing a full-time job. It just like is completely untenable and like no reason. It's like no wonder people have like decades long careers that are kind of lame because it's really unreasonably hard. And so when we looked into that issue more, we realized that there's this huge opportunity to build a talent marketplace for this type of employed person that is passively open. We felt that when looking at the recruiting market, all of our predecessors were very much catering towards this active search behavior that only actually represents a minority of the talent world. Meanwhile, 57% of everyone are described as those who are open to roles, but aren't willing to do the same amount of effort. And there's really nothing for that type of person. And that's why they're just kind of sitting there. That's why they're passive. But we thought, wow, like, what if we could just make something that meets them where they're willing to be met, that works in this marketplace model, and kind of respects that this person's time is very valuable. Perhaps then we could earn their participation in some kind of more efficient model where we don't have to have companies poking people one at a time, since we can centralize the information of everyone's intent. And bonus being those, not only is that the majority of the talent world, it's also where all the most valuable people are anyway. So if we can actually get their participation in a network, companies will be breaking down our door to get access to that because it's just so much more efficient than the manual outreach. So that was kind of the insight that brought us here. And the reason why it's over text message, it's all conversational and natural language, is because our end goal always is to make it easier and easier and easier to use. We see in the recruiting market, one of our theses is that as you make it easier to participate and start fielding relevant offers, you see the talent actually go up. Because there's this weird effect in the recruiting world where you have this kind of inverse relationship with how valuable someone is and how much bullshit they're willing to put up with.
That's a great observation, and I totally agree. As you have worked on Pearl and you got this insight and you're spending time on this, do you mind sharing what do you spend your time on as like a really early stage founder? Is it growth? Is it engineering? Are you fundraising, hiring? Like, what is life like for you in this very nascent early stage company?
Yeah, I answered this question very recently, so it's fresh in my mind. I'd say like the best way to describe it is like there is different levels that we'll go through, where like my main focus will be dedicated to a certain like category of work as we kind of work our way through the startup journey. First one being like, what should we build? And like before that, I was like, what does the market want? And that's like its own set of things where I'm like doing all this research and trying to consolidate it and distill it. And the next is like, how should we take that desire and manifest it in a product? And that's like, okay, like let's test this feature, let's make this mock-up and do those interviews and then put it out. How do we like launch something and get an initial set of users? That was another one. And then very recently was how do we raise money for this like idea now that we have it? And that was its own kind of cycle that was like 4 or 6 weeks long where I was getting into it, figuring out who should I talk to in the investment land. And just recently I've kind of switched focus to, okay, how do we unlock sustainable growth? And I think that those, like it generally separates into like, let's go mine data from the existing users and figure out what they want to make it even more kind of like worthy of telling your friends about it. And let's also do these experiments with outbound marketing efforts where we can see like what our CAC is in each channel. So that's kind of my current focus of activities, like doing a lot of interviews, setting up a lot of campaigns online.
And if you were to kind of look out into the future, 5, 10, 15 years, what does the world look like when Pearl wins, or what's the big vision here?
Yeah, so the kind of shift to remote work has only just begun. And I think it'll be like a decade as it plays itself out. And in that process, there's billions and billions of dollars of economic energy that's just like flooding into the market, specifically into the recruiting market. Because like never before in history has there been such a moment where the landscape has changed so widely for so many people in such a rapid moment that all the people who are currently employed are now looking like, oh, look, there's a job over there that I can take that's based in this country over here that I would never been able to work at before, but it's a 20% bump in my salary. Now that these constraints on geography are lifted, I have this way to optimize, and I'm going to cross over these geographic boundaries. And everyone in the world is like poking their head out of their cubicle, so to speak, and like seeing that opportunity for themselves. And so there's just an enormous, I can't overstate the amount of energy that's like this dam has broken, is flooding into the market. And I don't think any company is like really poised to act on that specific energy and like really help those people find those new roles. So we definitely want to play that role in like the macroeconomic sense. And then long term, like beyond that, we just see a world where like every person is on the market, so to speak, at all times. There's really no reason you shouldn't be on the talent market. If we can make it easy enough, we'll be in everyone's pocket for every career junction forever. And it just gives us access to the world's most valuable like intent graph for where people are and where they want to go. Yeah, it's really it's a really exciting position to be in, because there's like kind of a whole world of opportunities that we can, you know, be like grant access to once we have that intimate relationship established with each person.
And in order to make that happen, you'll need some help, right? It takes a village to make a startup work. So my question for you is, how can the forward-thinking founders community help? Are you hiring, raising money, looking for users, customers? You know, how can we assist?
Yeah, I love that question. We're definitely looking for more users for sure. So if like what I'm saying resonates with you, we're at usepearl.com. We're also hiring engineers. So probably mostly focused on some help with front end. We use both Angular and React actually, but mostly Angular. So folks that have like a lot of experience in there, we'd love to talk with them. And yeah, I think that's what I can think of now.
And then if someone wanted to learn more, find you online, where can they do that? Do you have a website, social media handle, or like an email address? How can someone learn more?
Yeah, I think I'm most active on Twitter. So it's Tim Connors, 3 words.
You're on Twitter? Wow, I've never been. What's that? I've never heard of that before. Just kidding. For my last question, which I don't always ask this, but I want to ask it today. Pearl, it's an interesting name for a company. How'd you come up with the name?
Yeah. I honestly, I was sitting on my couch with my roommate from 2 years ago, and we were talking about like the recruiting world and like what to name a company. And we were just like, like, I guess what we're trying to do is like unlock this like unique and rare value that's really hard to come by. It's almost like jewelry. It's almost like a pearl. And from there, we kind of realized the idiom of the world is your oyster. And we're like, oh, wow, like we really want to like let that be, we really want to bring that idiom to all of our users, right? And like unlock the world for them. And so you have this kind of framework where that job is that pearl, but also like you as the user are that pearl, and the world is the oyster in which you live, I guess. So it just fit for many reasons.
I think it's great. And I think I think what you're doing is awesome. And I think you're tackling a really exciting opportunity. And I'm excited that you took the time to share it all with us on Forward Thinking Founders. Thanks again for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Yeah, I haven't done too many podcast interviews, so I think this is fun.